Good morning, students. This is SS3 Geography coming to you from Federal Government College, Port Harcourt, presented by Odumaika. The topic of the lesson is contour representation of landform. The specific objectives is that by the end of today's lesson, you should be able to 1. Differentiate between a river valley and a dry valley. 2. Identify a spur on a map. 3. Identify a conical hill on a map. 4. Identify an isolated hill on a map. And 5. Identify a knoll, a ridge, a core, or a saddle on a map. So, this lesson is presented in different stages as follows. Step 1. Contour representation of landform. Specifically, we are looking at valley. Now, contours are used to represent landforms or relief features on maps. One of such features is the valley. A valley is a lowland between two highlands. Valleys are represented by V-shaped contour lines with the apex pointing towards the highlands. When a valley contains water, it is called a river valley. But when it does not contain water, it is called a dry valley. See the picture in the diagram 1 below. Step 2. A spur. Spurs are projections of highlands into lowlands. It is easily identified when one sees a V shape pointing towards lowland. Spurs separate one valley from another, and the contour numbering decreases outwards, that is towards the apex. If you look at the diagram 1 here, you will see a valley towards the northwestern axis here. From the top, you will see a valley, a river. Yes, you will see this river Oke that is flowing from those axes. There are two tributaries, one coming from the northeast, while one coming from the northwest, and then they meet at a point and start flowing downward, as you are seeing the arrow. Now, from that northeastern axis, you are seeing a spur. These are, the contours are arranged in such a manner that you see these contours are increasing towards the eastern side, as you are seeing the contour height on it 100, 200, 300 and 400 towards the eastern axis. So by that contour arrangement that you are seeing it curving towards the river, the valley that the water is flowing through, that now shows a symbol of a spur. Now, the valley in between the two highlands, one to the eastern side of the river Oke and the other one to the western side, that is a typical example of a valley that the river Oke is flowing through. Now, towards the extreme northeastern axis, we can see that that particular valley, water is flowing through it, which is called a river valley. Now, if you look the middle of this diagram, there is also a valley that water is not flowing through it, and that is called a dry valley. So, these are the features. Step 3. A conical hill is another feature that can be represented based on the way the contours are arranged. Now here, the contour lines are usually secular. It becomes smaller and smaller towards the center. As you are seeing the feature in diagram 2 here, you are seeing that the height of the contours started from the lowest one, 100, and it kept on increasing 200, 300, 400 until you get to the smallest one inside, which is about 700, 700 meters of height. So when you see this type of a feature on map, it is called a conical hill. Step 4, an isolated hill. This is a hill that is standing alone, far from other hills. It may be rounded or conical in shape. When you are looking at an isolated hill on map, any hill that is small, maybe of 2 or 3 contour line, that is far from other hills, that is a type of hill that you can identify as being an isolated hill. Isolation means something that is standing alone, something that is far from others. So you can check out on any map, to identify an isolated hill. Step 5. Step 5 is talking about a knoll, a ridge, a core, or a saddle. Now we are looking at a knoll. A knoll is an isolated peak of a few meters high that is usually associated with highland. It is a small hill standing from other highland. A ridge. A ridge or a mountain range is a geographical feature consisting of a chain of mountains or hills that form a continuous elevated crest for some distance. It is easily identified on maps when contours run parallel to each other. A core or a saddle. A core or saddle is a stretch of lowland which separate two highland areas. Usually on a ridge, two peaks are usually separated by a core. A saddle is like a core. The only difference is that a saddle is wider than the core. If you look at the diagram below, which is diagram 3, a ridge. This is a ridge. The entire diagram is called a ridge. This shape, a ridge are they are chains of highlands that are found in a particular place, covering, a reasonable distance. And so, if you look at this particular diagram, you can see contours. The way the contours are arranged is showing that from the foot of the highland, you can see that the first contour is 100 meters of height. Then the next one, no height is written, but the third contour line, we can see 300 meters of height that is written on it. And then the next one, there is no contour line, meaning that the highland is increasing towards the center, that we are seeing the smallest contour line after 700 meters of height, which means that the smallest contour line to the eastern part of the feature is 800 meters of height. Now, between that particular point, as you move towards the western axis, our left hand side of that particular feature, you see another small highland. In between two of them is a gap. There is a gap there that you are seeing a core or a saddle written. Also, if you look towards the left hand side, after where a pass is written, you can also see same feature to the left hand side where a core or a saddle is written. And so that kind of a gap on top of, at a reasonably elevated height is what is referred to as a core or a saddle. Of course, I told you earlier on that the difference between a core or a saddle is that if the gap, the gap between the two peaks is wider, for instance, uh, okay, one cannot have the exact, example here, but the where the gap between two peaks is wider, one can refer to that as a saddle, and then it can also be called a core. And so these are the features. A pass that we are seeing on this map is that, on this diagram, is that the gap on any highland that is not, the highland is not too high for a road to pass through. When a road pass through such a gap, it is called a pass. In summary, therefore, we have been able to identify the difference between, a valley, a dry valley, and a river valley. And we've been we've been able to talk about, you know, a spore. Been able to talk about a spore. We explained a spore as, a projection of highland into lowland, or a highland that is protruding towards a lowland. We also talked about a ridge. A ridge is, that we talked about, is reasonably, and there are chains of highlands in an area. We also talked about, you know, we also talked about, excuse me, we also talked about a conical hill, and that is, hills that, that are arranged, that are in circular shape, that is closing in towards the center. And then an isolated hill is, a highland that is standing alone in an area. So a ridge, of course, I told you, there are chains of highlands in a particular area. So these are the summary of, the lesson so far taught. Now, the assignment. 1. What is the difference between a river valley and a dry valley? 2. Identify a spur on the map of Atiango district given. 3. Identify a conical hill on the map of Igbonla district given. 4. On the map of Odu district given, identify a ridge, a core, and a saddle. Thank you, and God bless you. Stay safe. God bless you.